I just prepared a very brief kind of an introductory presentation because this morning we will have also more example about how this organizational capacity can be built, what is the needed institutional setup, hearing from different examples, these different cases. And I'm also very happy to have with us Marco Knowles. Marco also works here in FAO in the Economic and Social Policy Division. Is that? And Marco has been very involved in a project in Bangladesh, the National Food Policy Capacity Strengthening Project, correct? Yeah. Okay. So I plan to have a sort of very brief presentation, and then I asked Marco to maybe elaborate a little bit based on the points made, offer some examples from the project and from the Food Policy Monitoring Unit in Bangladesh. I am tempted to give cards to Prabhu. If after 10 minutes you show me the yellow card, okay, it's just I know what. A rule is a rule. Yes, yes. We want to improve time management. So, very briefly, how do we strengthen organizational capacity? I want to start very simply, but the first is to obviously increase resources. He was saying yesterday, we give blood to a sick person, the person will feel better, right? It's, we give more money, we give more resources, more human resources, more capacity, more knowledge, more technology. That is one way. The other way is to improve the way we use these resources, how we use them. And usually there are exceptions, but in the experience I've had as an institution specialist, usually you get resources if you improve the way you use them. It is very hard that you will get more resources without making any change. Usually one goes with the other. These things go together. And so I like to focus a little bit more on the how we use the resources. And I want to introduce this with a little anecdote. I was in Mexico just this summer at a training for future forestry leaders in public forestry agencies. And there were many countries represented, many very excellent presentations from many different fields. And one of the outcomes of this presentation was that these agencies like the ones where you're working, are really facing incredible challenges because your policies are changing. There's not only forestry. Now you have to worry about climate change, livelihoods, food security, water, biodiversity, becoming much, much broader. And not only you're looking at the country, you're making a lot of commitments also internationally. So your policies are becoming more complex. At the same time, you're facing different challenges. Climate change is just one, but many others. And also a lot of new opportunities. Some of the things that we learned was, for example, how much private investments is available in this sector. And it is growing very rapidly. Maybe not all of your countries, but I'm sure, for example, in Tanzania, private investment, very big player. Myanmar, huge. Peru also. The knowledge base to make strategic decisions is also growing exponentially. What we knew 20 years ago, 10 years ago, now we have 3-4 times more knowledge. So with all these changes, it is essential to work in a different way. And one of the 3 sort of building blocks that came out of these trainings was to increase organizational effectiveness. You need to really pay attention to these 3 areas. The first one is to have a results orientation. It is not anymore okay to just say this is our strategy and we will do depending on what happens. It is very important to, yesterday we already heard a little bit, and I will say a couple of few more words, about to be focused on results. The second thing is that we cannot anymore do this all by ourselves. Our agency may have the main mandate, but in order to fulfill this mandate, we need to also engage others and to work with others. And the third thing is the importance of continuous learning, because things keep changing. They're not changing every 2 years or every year. Sometimes they change every week, right? And so the importance to always keep asking ourselves what it is that I'm learning, what it is that I need to learn, right? So these are the 3 pillars, and I just want to spend just a few words on each of those. This is a little bit of a repetition of what was said yesterday, but what does it mean to have a results orientation? Well, it means to be clear about your purpose. Alberto did a very good job yesterday to explain that. And the outcomes. What does it mean? How do we operationalize that? And once we're clear with the outcome, we need to put resources there. Because if we have a clear outcome and purpose, but we don't put resources, well, nothing is going to happen, right? The results are created by what? Not by intentions, not by guidelines. They're created by action. We need to do action to get results. So we need to put energy, resources there. The third thing is, once we put resources and we take action, we need to track very closely what we're getting. And I want to be a little bit provocative with Alberto yesterday, because he said we do the monitoring, we do the evaluation, and then we do the learning. But I'm asking you, how often do you think you need to ask yourself, what do we need to learn? Is it okay to do it once a year? What have we learned this year? Is that okay? I'm not thinking just about the organizational level, but even in your own team. How often do you need to ask yourself, what do I need to learn? My experience, because I also work in a public agency here, is that we need to ask this question very often. Very often. Almost every day, right? Almost every day. And with what I am learning, I need to adjust my strategy, because the old saying is, if I keep doing the same thing, I keep getting the same. You guys never heard it. I keep getting the same results, right? I keep doing the same thing, I keep getting the same result. I want to get better results when I need to change something. So, and just as an example of the first part, be clear about the purpose. This you have in the book that was distributed yesterday, the Food Security CIP. Very clear outcome, very clear purpose. The purpose to ensure dependable, sustained food security. That's the overall goal. And very clear outcomes. We want to have increased food availability, food access, food utilization, and very clear indicators. How we're going to track that, how we're going to learn, how we're going to adjust our strategy depending on what we learn. The second thing I want to mention very briefly is the importance to engage constructively other public agencies and also private. And I simplify with the 3 E's. The first one is to enlist. We need to motivate others, to work with us. We cannot just expect because we're doing an important job, they're going to support us. No, we need to enlist them. We need to find ways to work together. Our visions need to be also a shared vision, right? The second one is to empower them. Once we enlist them, we need to empower them, to give them the capacities to really work together with us. Sometimes it means training. Sometimes it means maybe also resources. Sometimes it means to maybe share responsibility and authority, but we need to empower them. And the third thing is to encourage them. We sometimes work with partners, but even when we work together, we fail to acknowledge their contribution, to say, great job. Really, this would not have been possible without your support. To really treat them as partners, that is, it helps me to think about these 3 E's, to enlist, empower, and encourage them. And the third part is, the last part is continuous learning. What does it mean to have in your team, in your organization, or in your division, a spirit, a culture of continuous learning? There was a very nice article published in the Harvard Business Review about organizational learning. And they said there are basically 3 things, to really focus on. One is you need to have learning processes and learning practices. For example, learning processes can be to have information collection, to have information system, systems that collect, manage, analyze information, to have institutionalized systems of training of your staff, so that staff, when they are hired, sometimes, that's the knowledge they have, and then the next time they receive training may be years later. Well, that needs to be part of the of learning of the organization. I'd be curious to hear how the FPMU internalized that, and also to be transparent in sharing the information that we gained. On the information collection, I took this also from the experience of the Food Policy Monitoring Unit. Maybe Marco will say a few words later. The third thing, the second thing that I want to mention is, in order to learn as a team, it's important to have also a supportive learning environment. What I mean by that is that to be open to new ideas. I don't know in your teams, where do new ideas come from? Do they come from the top? Do they come from multiple sources? Do you value an idea if it comes from, let's say, a more junior staff? Where do you think your ideas come from? I'm kind of and when ideas are shared, to appreciate the difference. Maybe when something is shared, maybe it is not totally practical, maybe it is not, but it is also important to appreciate difference, because when people share their opinions, their views, and we don't appreciate them, what happens next time? What happens next time? In a few more times, they will not share anymore, right? And so an opportunity for learning is also lost. Another key element to create a learning environment is to encourage experimentation and to what they call up psychological safety. For example, if you try something new in your work and you fail, what happens? Does your supervisor says, wow, good job for trying something new. I knew you had a challenge. I really commend you. It didn't work, but you took initiative. Good for you. Try more. Is that what happens? Or you get transferred to the little office there that in the middle of the bush. It's important to encourage this, to create that psychological safety so that people will share what they know. I know in other sectors, for example, I was reading this very interesting book about the aviation industry that used to have that a lot of aviation error were caused by human error, the pilots. And at one point, the human errors decreased dramatically. What happened? Well, the people that work in the airplanes were encouraged to say that something was wrong. Before, it was the pilot is always right. Whatever says the pilot, in discuss. So nobody else said anything. An accident would happen. The moment other people, engineers or stewards, whatever, there's something wrong here, and they were encouraged to share it, dramatically human error decreased. So that psychological safety is important. And to also create time for reflection. When we do something, try to, a little bit like we did yesterday. What can we learn? It doesn't take a long time to do that.
What is EAR?
Huh? EAR is it's an acronym for After Action Review. It's something that you can do, for example, even after a meeting. You organize a meeting. I know many public officials, I travel to many countries, and they tell me one of the worst things is I go to too many meetings where nothing happens, nothing is decided. So that can be an opportunity to learn. How can we learn? from what worked in this meeting that really was productive. And your leadership is also very important. Your leadership to, for example, continue to communicate the purpose of what we're doing, the outcomes that we're after. To invite inputs by asking, probing questions. You know, we have this tendency to think that the most senior person, of course, has the most authority, but has all the answers. Well, but that is not always the case. To listen when people share their views, to encourage multiple points of views, and to provide time and resources for learning. I just want to share some of the challenges that prevent teams and organizations really from learning. One is that we tend to be very focused on procedures, right? Very focused on procedure that we sometimes forget what is the results that we are after. And we're often very preoccupied with very operational things. And many public agencies, they are a little bit in this firefighting mode. There's an emergency and everybody mobilizes, go there. And there's another thing and you go there. And then at the end of the year, you look at your work plan and say, okay, how much time and resources and effort and care did I actually put into what was really important to do? I'm sure it is not your case. I'm sure it doesn't happen in your organization. But in the other ones that I work with, this is a common problem. Reluctance to invest in training for staff, which is very important. And the last one is this idea that the leader is always right. Obviously, they know more, they have more information, they have the authority. Obviously, they take the responsibility for that. So it's very important, their role. But they also have limitations. They also have something to learn. So, well, maybe rather than going into this discussion question, I know this was a little bit general, but I hoped it helped a little bit refocus on the importance of being results-oriented, engaging others, and learning. And maybe I pass the word to Marco that maybe you want to also introduce yourself just to